Okay, so again, I'm hoping that this is working. I know you guys, again, can't see my face. I apologize for that, but I have multiple videos for you guys today, so hopefully those videos will come through. Uh, Not really sure. I might have to just post this so you guys can watch the videos, because I am going to ask a question or two based off the videos. But I do hope to also finish chapter 11 here. So we're on we're talking about chapters 10 and 11. We finished chapter 10 some time ago. Today should be the end of chapter 11. So we talked a little bit about the issues that we have with growing our own food and GMOs and ways that we're trying to essentially increase our our productivity. But I wanted to talk about aqua farming as well. So the farming of aquatic organisms such as fish and shellfish, seaweeds, things of that nature. Anything that is from the ocean, if it is farmed, is considered aquaculture. So aquaculture relies on a fishery, and this is a commercially harvestable population of fish within a particular ecological region. So it's just an area that is fished based off of the area that people live in. However, fish are interesting because they are not governmentally controlled. So they are subject to tragedy of the commons, I would say, more often than any other resource, which is why we talked about, which is one of the examples that I gave was in Maine. It was the cod population, how it died off. It's because it's not regulated in the same way that other industries are. 90% of the fish population is harvested or killed when we get fishery collapse, and unfortunately, we've found places where that has occurred. Commercial fishing also results in bycatch, which we talked about a little bit before this, which is the unintentional catching and killing of non-target species. So again, this is something, and actually I have a little picture up in the corner. Probably can't see it because of this guy right here, but this little timer. But that is a sea turtle trapped in a fishing net with fishing lines wrapped around it. It's just a tragic thing, but this does occur. And again, it's because of the tragedy of the commons. No one is governing these fisheries, at least not in the same way that we do everything else. So other farming practices that we haven't really talked about that I do want to include, and this is also in your book, so make sure that you guys are reading through your book, include shifting agriculture, which is in places where large farming equipment, is not available. What they do is they implement shifting agriculture, or the slash and burn method. With this method, large parcels of land are cleared and burned, producing very nutritious ash crops that are planted and harvested, and then processes repeated. So there's benefits to this, and there's downsides. The slash and burn method does replenish some of the nutrients that has been depleted from the soil, but it also burns a lot of CO2 in the process. But it's one of the things that can be done. It also results in forest fires sometimes, so there's some pros and cons there. Nomadic grazing is when you feed herds of animals by moving them to seasonally productive feeding grounds. So basically you just rotate them from one pasture to another, and this is where most grain or grass-fed beef, for example, is done in this method. And that's why ranchers in places like Texas and Wyoming, they have these huge swaths of land because they practice nomadic grazing. And so if you're going to feed a herd of cattle, when you're talking about hundreds of head of cattle, when you're going to feed them in this manner, you have to have lots of land to replenish that basically nothing is happening on, so they're going to naturally regrow the grass that was depleted so that it can then be fed to the cows once it comes back within the cycle. So once it's replenished, the cows will go back and graze there once again. So even better methods. These are ways to practice sustainable agriculture, and these are ways that I wish were being implemented more. But one of the things, and we don't really go into the pros and cons of this, your book does more, but one of the things that is not discussed here, but is absolutely true, is that there are downsides to this, and the main downside is cost. So we have this double-edged sword where we're trying to feed people as economically as possible, because many people live below the poverty line, and especially in times like what we're currently in, when inflation is so high, we need to be conscious of the price of goods like food. Food is a necessity. It's not like something, we're not talking about Nike shoes here. We're not talking about things that you don't need. Food is something you need. So it has to be readily available, it has to be accessible, and yet we also have to balance that readily available accessibleness, if you will. We have to balance it with being sustainable. And so how do we do that? Well, as it turns out, most of the time the economics wins. So whatever is the cheapest and easiest to produce usually is what wins out. However, those aren't the only ways. You can also practice what is called intercropping, where two or more species of plants are planted at the same time. Usually corn and peas would be an example of this, simply because the corn is taking up lots of nitrogen, while the peas, through nitrogen fixation, are putting back a lot of that nitrogen. Crop rotation does a very similar thing. It just does it throughout seasons as opposed to at the same time. Agroforestry is really cool. Actually, what's up in the corner of the screen there is a form of agroforestry where you intercrop trees, or interplant, I should say, trees with crops. And this is done primarily to avoid erosion, simply because the tree roots are going to protect against that erosion. Contour plowing is also where you go with the topography, contours of the land. There's lots of places in Asia where this is done, and you guys can see in rice fields, for example, they will go down with the rough terrain. By the way, sorry for my voice. Excuse me. It's a little bit crazy today. By the way, my shirt today is pink. It's pink of all things. It's interesting. There's also no-till agriculture, which I'm going to play this video for you. And again, I don't know how this is going to look. So if you guys can't see this video, I will post it in another way. But I'm going to play this video for you. It's an example of no-till agriculture, rather, where they leave the crop residuals, which is what's left after you harvest. You leave it in the ground so that that soil can stay intact because the roots are still there, and then you till it, or you either don't till it, it gets sort of broken down in the soil, or you till it just once a year. So I'm going to play this.
We used to plant our crops by the start of the year, and we didn't get anything at all from our farms because we didn't have enough rainfall. So it is a sisal that is the best crop that can withstand the droughts. Welcome to my workshop. I'm called Alex Omundo, and I'm an innovator on simple agricultural machines.
According to the UN, Africa is one of the most vulnerable continents to climate change due to its poverty levels, scarce water sources, and rain-fed farmland. Farmers here in Kenya are being forced to look for new, more drought-resistant options to grow when traditional crops fail. This is where sisal comes in. Sisal is built for harsher climates. Under its green exterior are strong fibres that are useful in making all sorts of things. There's just one problem.
You can see the initial stages is very labor intensive. So this takes a long time because my mother used to do this, and she could only get little fiber throughout the day. She was selling the product to buy us some school books, uniforms, buy us food. As a young boy, I liked science. I promised my mother that one day I'll give you a machine that is going to help you process much more fiber. Building that machine took a long time. In that journey, I can remember 8 prototypes. And the 9th one is the one that worked. This is the sisal decorticator.
This was Alex's first invention. It can strip sisal fibres in seconds. These fibres can be sold for 20 shillings per kilo. But this wasn't enough for Alex.
This is the sisal twiner.
This machine turns the fibres into rope, which adds value of almost 180%. The rope can be used to make a variety of items, like bags and mats.
So far, I've sold a total, it's more than 100 machines. When they buy a machine from me, I encourage them to plant more sisal, at least 1 acre, so that if they fail to get these other crops, then they are able to get their finances from the sisal plant. I cannot give them handouts every day, but if I teach them something that is going to help them in their entire life, then I think that would be very important for me. And that's why I think sisal is one of the things that I can take to them. And if they buy the idea, then I believe their life will not remain the same again.
So I was actually incorrect. I initially thought this was from no-till agriculture. But I remember now that this is actually a video that talks about, and this is not one of the things that I discussed, but it is a part of sustainable farming, where you are farming specific crops that are native to the area. And this is one of the things that I wish we did more. We are, natively speaking, we are grassland, so I wish we were growing, for example, like rapeseed or other sort of grasses that we could sell for other products. But instead, because farming is so subsidized here in the United States, we grow commercially viable crops like soybean and corn, and dip corn in particular for the feed, but also the soybean for the feed of other animals. And one of the things that we need to do, in my opinion, is to divert away from that and go towards more, especially in arid places, go towards more native species that are naturally crop or drought resistant, that are naturally pesticide resistant because they've grown in that area. So they know what kind of bugs are there. They know what kind of climate is there. And I wish that we did more of that. So very cool video though, and very cool idea. I'm going to go ahead.
We use
If I can, go to the next one here. So there are new, speaking of pest control, there are new methods of pest control. And this is all part of what's called integrated pest management, or IPM, which attempts to minimize pesticide use, because we've realized that we want people to eat healthy, but we also don't want them to ingest some of the pesticides that we are producing. And it's one of the reasons why we think one, colony collapse is happening with bees. It's one of the reasons why we think there is a lowering of our sperm count in men of westernized societies. There's a lot of things that we are attributing in part to pest control on crops, on the food that we're eating. So one of the things that we do is we crop rotate. We've introduced way more GMOs, so we've genetically modified these organisms to utilize less pesticides and defend themselves based off of their own anatomy, their own genes. Limiting application times and amounts, and that idea kind of lends itself into organic farming, which is the farming is farming without the use of pesticides. It results in more erosion, more CO2 production, and less yield. However, you are utilizing less pesticide. So there's pros and cons to both of these things. So one of the reasons why there's more CO2 is because oftentimes they will use burning to kill off weeds as opposed to pesticides. So that's one of the things that raises that CO2. And they use more tractors because it's more labor intensive. They use more machinery, so there's more erosion on the soil because of compaction, and there's more CO2 as a result also. So how do we apply this to aquaculture? Well, we rotate fishing grounds. One of the things that we need to do with our fisheries, and one of the things that's been put into practice, is limiting our catch. So the main thing is probably quotas, as you can see for the second thing. If you guys go and you go fishing here in Missouri or in Illinois, you'll have a certain amount that you can catch in a given day for most species. So that's considered a quota, and that quota is obviously much larger for commercial fishing vessels, but it's still there. It's still enforced. So you can only get so much out of those fisheries. You can only have so much of what's called the allowable catch to either eat or to sell. And you're usually not allowed to fish or harvest from a particular area over and over and over again. They try to go from that area to the next and allow that fishery to recoup itself before its fishery is completely depleted by just excessive fishing in that one region. So I'm going to play this video as well. I told you guys there's a lot of videos on this one. Hopefully, again, they're coming through. I will put
in the 16th century, the coastal waters of what is now called Nova Scotia and Newfoundland were teeming with life. Even after centuries of fishing by the Mi'kmaq and Mauiite peoples indigenous to the region, European fishermen wrote extensively of the abundance of life in the northern Atlantic. One account from veteran sailor Charles Lee describes the greatest multitude of lobsters that we have ever heard of, catching over 140 lobsters in just one haul. While another account from Father Pierre Biard claims that spawning fish were often so abundant that you cannot put your hand in the water without encountering them. But by 1992, that oceanic abundance had completely collapsed. North American cod populations dropped to 1% of their historical population. Over the course of 4 centuries, the Northwest Atlantic seas went from absolute abundance to decimation. What happened? And what threats do our vast oceans face from a world based on capitalist exploitation?
This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream, which now comes with Nebula for free when you sign up using the link in the description.
I'm gonna attempt to collect 30 million pounds of trash from this river all by myself.
And we're gonna pick up every single piece of trash on this beach.
Right now, YouTube is awash in the push to clean up trash in our waterways and oceans. It's exciting to see people get motivated about environmental issues, but ocean trash is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to unlocking exactly what endangers our seas. In fact, there are a number of other, less visible, but nevertheless catastrophic threats that our seas face, like heightened acidity, temperature rise, and dead zones. Today, however, I want to focus in on just one: overfishing. A problem that not only affects our global marine ecosystem, but the 59.5 million fisherfolk spread across the world. Let's go back to Newfoundland in 1992. There, fishing boats went out to sea expecting their usual catch, only to come back empty-handed. The Atlantic cod population had completely collapsed, and with it, the livelihoods of thousands of people intertwined with the North Atlantic fishing industry. And in 2000, the World Wildlife Fund even placed Atlantic cod on their endangered species list. To this day, cod populations in the Northwest Atlantic have yet to recover. But this species collapse due to relentless fishing practices is not exclusive to cod and the Northwest Atlantic. Overfishing is happening all over the world. According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, from 1990 to 2017, the percentage of global fish stocks within biologically sustainable levels dropped from 90% to 65.8%. In part, this is due to the continued increase of fishing across the world. As of 2018, we caught and consumed the most sea life ever in a year. And while we dine on tuna, lobster, and salmon, fish populations are paying the price. The number of fish in the sea is not infinite, and with increased stressors like higher ocean temperatures and acidity, which weaken fish eggs and stunt species resilience, industrial overfishing practices are the last drop in the bucket that have pushed various fish species careening towards crisis. One study estimated that our oceans have lost more than 90% of large predatory fishing, while another analysis reveals that 82% of global fisheries are in a dangerous decline. But fishing can take a wide variety of forms, from subsistence catching to industrial scale trawling. So is there one fishing practice that is more harmful than others? Fishing can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. For a subsistence fisher in Bangladesh, fishing might look like a fishing rod and line catching one fish at a time. While for an industrial fisher along the coast of China, fishing might mean dragging large nets across the ocean floor to capture schools of fish all at once, a practice known as trawling. In total, industrial trawling represents a third of all fishing practices, and when combined with net purse fishing, large-scale industrial fishing accounts for over half of all fish caught in a year. This is a problem, because big net fishing, especially trawling, is one of the most destructive ways to fish. In the process of dragging large nets across the seabed, fisherfolk destroy fragile ecosystems on the ocean floor, as well as indiscriminately catch what's known as bycatch, or in other words, marine life that is not commercially viable and often dies or gets thrown back into the water after the net is hauled into the boat. Think Dory and Finding Nemo. Trawling and big net purse fishing have facilitated a rise in overfishing due to the sheer volume fishing boats are able to capture per hour. In part, this industrialization of fishing gear, combined with advancements in on-boat refrigeration, processing, and storage, has led to increased fishery declines since the 1950s. But industrialization and new technologies aren't the only reason why we see a nearly global decline in fish stocks. These technologies are rooted in a market-based approach to fishing that has meant a constant need for growth and profit for fishermen. Or, in other words, they need to continuously outfish and outsell their competitors in order to survive.
I see the rationale for people consuming wildlife from the sea as a response to marketing. Those who want to create an appetite for fish, an appetite for lobsters and shrimp, because it's their profit that they're looking for.
That's Dr. Sylvia Earle, an expert in marine life with over 30 years of experience in the ocean. For her, the massive rise in fish consumption over the last half-century has been driven by marketing, which at its root is a product of capitalist, profit-driven pursuits. If we turn back to the northwest Atlantic coast, we can see that before European fisherfolk crossed the ocean in pursuit of richer fisheries, the waters there were teeming with fish, despite the fact that the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet fished those waters for sustenance. Only once fisherfolk involved in a burgeoning capitalist market economy began to extensively fish for cod did the ecosystems begin to dwindle. Much like other capitalist extraction industries, fishing under capitalism has commodified certain fish like cod or bluefin tuna and is fishing them to near extinction. In a competitive fishing market, the fisherfolk who are able to catch the most amount of fish in the shortest amount of time will come out on top. A model that incentivizes large net trawling and mechanization processes that, when left unchecked, have decimated fisheries. To add insult to injury, as Brett Clark and Rebecca Clausen argue in their paper on oceanic decline and capitalism, competitive markets create incentives to expand production regardless of resource decline. Thus, in reaction to decreased stocks due to overfishing, ground fishing fleets move farther offshore. Essentially, in a capitalist market devoid of regulation, profit incentives push the fishing industry not to maintain the marine ecosystem, but instead to fish it to death and then move on to richer waters. So then how do we challenge this paradigm? When it comes to the declining health of our global waterways, there's a lot more at work than just plastic trash. In fact, extractive fishing is just one of the many threats causing marine ecosystems to crumble, which is why saving our seas has to encompass a lot more than ocean cleanups. Because cleanups are just a band-aid solution. Even if we take every piece of trash out of our waterways right now, the equivalent of a garbage truck full of plastic still continues to flow into our oceans every single minute. Only larger, more structural approaches like regulating fishing industries, implementing sustainable and regenerative fishing practices guided by indigenous leaders, or maybe for some, not eating fish altogether. In fact, a portion of ocean trash is debris from industrial fishing, like old nets and line. But saving the oceans is also intertwined with blocking new oil pipelines, as well as disrupting fossil fuel operations that create emissions, plastics, and deadly oil spills. Which means that standing in solidarity with water protectors who stood in the way of the Keystone XL, Dakota Access, Line 3, and Line 5 pipelines, and many more, is also crucial to protecting our waterways. Ultimately, there are countless movements and organizers already working to overthrow the fossil fuel industry and extraction paradigms that lead to ocean trash and decimated fish populations. So to truly save the seas, we need to mobilize ourselves, find a place to plug in, whether that be a mutual aid organization, a local socialist chapter, or eco-sabotage group, and fight for a future where life on land and in the water isn't in danger of tipping over the edge. During this video, you might have noticed that I left out a growing industry that's slowly piling more fish onto our plates. Aquaculture. It's a huge topic, and I felt that it deserved more than just a one-sentence mention in this video. So instead, I wrote a small section covering the key issues of fish farming. But I cut it out of this video because I felt like it was a tangent, and I wanted to...
Okay, so he's going to go into his little, I guess, commercial kind of after this. But listen, guys, the example that I have for this, and one that I kind of talked about earlier in the year because that's when it came about, is the 2021-2022 snow crab apocalypse that we are experiencing, where billions, literally billions with a B, of snow crabs have disappeared. And I was looking into that, kind of trying to find some of the things that that could explain this now that it's been some time since we last talked about it. And honestly, there's still not a general consensus as to what is occurring, what has occurred. There are some scientists that believe that they have moved to cooler waters, trying to escape the temperatures. But one scientist in particular, this was in the Times. This was from the 21st of March this year, so it was literally just a couple days ago, or it's today, I'm sorry, where it was published. It appears that the decline of these crabs is associated with higher temperatures. Um, and some scientists believe that the crabs require more energy because of the higher temperatures and have not been able to find enough food, leading to a mass die-off. So, which is as much, and honestly, there was clues to this last year in the 2018 season. Crabs were found to be about 15% lighter than in 2017. So they were already starting the process of kind of slimming down because they were utilizing excess body weight to survive. Guys, we had evidence that this was going to happen. And so the belief is now that they've researched it a little bit more, that these crabs did not just move on, that they have completely died off. Guys, they canceled the 2021 season, or the 2022 season for snow crab fishing in Alaska. Alaskan snow crabs. This is huge. This is entire families' industries. This is their livelihood, and there's a possibility that they're going to cancel it next year as well. Another article that I found states that that between 2021 and 2022, mature male snow crabs declined by about 40%. 40%. That means 45 million pounds are left in the entire Barents Sea. So, guys, I honestly I see stuff like this and I just can't help myself. We're killing the ocean. And I am a lover of seafood. Okay, I love snow crab legs. I'm truly saddened by this, and I hope that you guys are too.
In the 16th.
Let's go ahead. I think I have one more. So I'm not going to make you watch Bloomberg. This is a great video. I might make you guys watch it tomorrow, but I'm already way past my 20-minute timeline. I'm still under 30 though, so I'm not super upset about it. But guys, I will have a few questions associated with this. Please watch it. If the sound doesn't come through well, you can just read the words, or you can find the video on YouTube. That'll work as well. Guys, thanks for watching. I'll post this and have your questions with it very soon. See you guys tomorrow.